Sales is a tough thing to do career-wise. You're constantly in baptism by fire. And if you're not in a situation that has a lot of support and a lot of coaching and helping you manage that, then you just have to be the kind of person that has thick skin. But your job as a C-level person is not to be the smartest person in the room. You want to hire the smartest people in the room. Your job is simply to make decisions based upon all of the information that they feed back. Just because you're a veteran, just because you've been doing it 20 plus years, doesn't mean that you shouldn't also practice calls, that you shouldn't also relearn things.
I want some hard truth. Why many companies don't really invest in coaching the coach, build that skill set, the passion for actually coaching. Hello everyone, this is Michael Ocean, founder and CEO of Sell Me the Spin. I have my great friend Brian Looney on the call. Look, Brian has been a founder, CRO, you name it, seller. So he's been around revenue organizations for a very long time. And today I'm super excited to chat about whether it's possible to actually build a resilient sales team through coaching. But before I start asking questions and get formal about it, Brian, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction, Mike. I'm not sure that I can add too much to it other than I'm a 20-plus year sales veteran. Been an individual contributor, been a manager, been a leader, been a founder, been a boss, been an employee, done the whole gamut. Most of that, certainly in the last 17 years, has all been SaaS related. A lot of it focused on intellectual property, as far as dealing with that as an industry, whether it's piracy or brand protection, anti-counterfeiting, and then intellectual property management software as well, up until now, and where I'm actually doing a sales coaching, business at the moment. So a lot of this kind of leads into, what it is that I'm doing. But married, got a son who's just turned 11, and we're all super excited for our Dodgers to play in the World Series tonight.
Yeah.
So whenever you people are watching this video, know that it is October the 25th that we're recording this, and looking forward to Game 1 tonight.
Nice. All right, man. I appreciate you sharing. Look, Brian, I'm super excited about the topic because, to your point, you've been there, done that. You've been a founder, and it's hard. Like, I'm doing it right now, and it's the third company I'm building. And each time I'm doing it, I'm like, oh man, it's hard. What a trouble. I mean, So I want to hear from your perspective. Look, there's so many things we can do to help sellers and revenue orgs in general. And I shared quite a few topics with you around so many things. We could get tactical about like playbook adoption, methodologies, and you picked this specific topic around building resilience through coaching. I wanted to hear why, like any specific reason as to why you choose this?
Yeah. Probably the number one thing, for it is, one big thing is obviously that's what I'm focused on doing, certainly at the moment, in a business that's really providing fractional sales leadership to smaller businesses, emerging growth companies, and helping them come up and set in processes and, run everything from how do I truly build a sales organization, everything from comp plans, up to talent management, what types of systems to use and the rest. And then biggest component of that is actually helping establish good go-to-market solutions. And how do you actually get out and take that? What are the technologies and other things that you need to aid that effort? Ultimately, a bit of that is how we came to know each other, as well. But the biggest part of that topic is coaching is really something that has to happen kind of all the time, I think, for a lot of people. Sales is a tough thing to do career-wise. You're constantly in baptism by fire, with this. And baseball is a good correlation to it because it's really one of the only other industries where succeeding 30% of the time, you're a rock star.
Yeah,
in it.
true.
So if you're batting 300 as a hitter, you're the top of the league in doing that. And same thing kind of applies to sales, where you're mostly failing. And how do you respond to that? And if you're not in a situation that has a lot of support and a lot of coaching and helping you manage that, then you just have to be the kind of person that has thick skin. But I don't think that's natural to most people. And it's not even natural to most salespeople. It's natural to a certain select percentage of salespeople. But most people who come into it as a career may not have that natural component to them, but you can build that through proper coaching and support, and the rest, and continue to motivate them to, again, walk into walls all the time. And that's true in any type of sale, whether you're in a business that is a one call close type of solution, or something where most of what I've done in my career are much longer sales cycles. I mean, even up to a year, at time, because all of that resilience kind of coming through all of those processes. How do I get up and do it again when you're getting punched in the face, all the time?
That is true. Look, I love it. You mentioned something interesting. Said, look, we got to know each other through that too. Like about 3 years ago, I was starting this, no idea what we were doing. Yes, I've been in sales for a number of years, but building a business, it's a different story. And I was rusty a little bit, to be honest, like because I got a job for 2, 3 years. I was doing consulting and working with a bunch of other companies, and I wanted to restart. I wanted to start something fresh again. And when we were chatting, so many things we discussed was around, yes, to your point, how to really build a proper, sales process, how to go through this validation phase, run better discovery calls. But at the end of the day, if you don't have tough skin, you don't even get to start looking at all these challenges, because you're like, it's too much to do. That's the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And any sales organization or sellers, to your point, whether you're selling more transactional, one-off close because you have the volume and you most probably get rejected more, or you sell large enterprise that take a year or even sometimes like 2 years, going back and forth, that you hear at some period people might be a little bit, less responsive to you, to your inquiries, or it's challenging. So you need to have that patience, and you need to build it by
Yeah.
practicing it. So speaking of practice, I wanted to, understand, like, is it something that we have to improvise while doing, or maybe there are tactical ways for, people like yourself to actually coach people to learn how to deal with this?
Well, there's certainly tactical components to it, really, in any aspect of it. Just my opinion, but I think it's validated by most other people in the industry. Everything is always about qualifying. So you kind of should always be in a qualifying mode. What that means ultimately is you're asking questions. So when you take it then back to your salespeople and thinking of the fact that almost everything in life is sales, right? What I'm wearing and what
Sure.
you're wearing today sells something about yourself, regardless of anything. Doing a podcast sells something about, you're persuading members of your family to do something, persuading your dog. I mean, everything is
Dogs, yeah.
potentially,
Sure.
some sales related effort. We may not realize it, and we don't think of it as obvious as sales for it, but it really is that component. So really, to do it in the best way possible, you're constantly asking questions. So when you're asking questions of your sales team, it's really looking for as much feedback in anything as you possibly can. It's not managing as much as it's leading or coaching, in that effort. Criticizing people, in my opinion, doesn't really correct the behavior or improve the behavior as much as trying to walk them through and having them discover things on their own, and then encouraging the right behaviors, that you have
Mhm.
from there. The bigger part of it is that, yes, the tactical approach for me is just asking questions of each person in each situation, because everyone's motivations are going to be different, or at least slightly different than the rest. Really, it's going to come down to what is the situation, what is that individual, how are they going to best respond to any type of encouragement or coaching that's going to help them succeed. So it's just you're selling as a manager or as a coach yourself to them, or your expertise or your knowledge. And the best way you sell anything is ask questions. What do they want? What is the motivation? Sell me this pen, as a classic thing in sales. It's really about asking questions. What type of pen are you in the market for? How long have you been looking for a pen? What is the thing that most gets you excited about pens? All of the things that get as boring as that sounds, that's sales. You're uncovering things for them. And hopefully the good salesperson who's gone through a good training process gets to that point where the questions that they're actually asking start to set traps for the client. Now, that may sound ooh, ruthless. I don't mean it that. It's like you're asking it in a way that's leading them down the path that your solution or your pen is the one that they need. So you ask questions in the right way that leads them down to what are your differentiators, what makes what you're doing
Hmm.
special, so that as they start to, again, answer those questions, they're really selling themselves.
Totally correct. You know what you're saying make a lot of sense, and it's so easy to digest because it's simple. Like to your point, it's sales, right? Whether you're selling a pen or you're trying to have a conversation with the person in front of you, getting to know that individual
Yeah.
and understanding like the specific challenges that they're facing. I think that changes everything. And you know what's funny?
Yeah.
It's we have a number of CROs and VPs on the call, and they pretty much said the same thing. It's like, look, there's no magic framework. I would say you should go back to basic and just really get to know your people and spend enough time with them so they can open up. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's certainly belief systems that you can have culturally in the type of organization that you run. I do think salespeople tend to have certain personality types that lend itself more to critical feedback, for it. But really, to your point with that, when you can demonstrate that you care about them, then they're going to be more receptive to the things that you say, even if sometimes that has to be harsh truths that come out of it.
mhm.
Critical feedback is extremely important, but again, it goes back down to how it's delivered and whether or not it's coming from a place of sincerity in you wanting them to improve. If you're
Mhm.
just being negative or making it personal, then you're not actually helping them and they're never going to be receptive or take on how they can improve. Very much always comes down to the personal side for you as far as making that relationship work. Then again, what you say and how you coach it should not be a personal attack. It should be professional improvement. One of the examples that is used often in that is there's a big difference between saying somebody is stupid and somebody did something stupid, right?
Mhm.
How you phrase that and how you communicate that is the most important piece, right? If somebody made a mistake and they did something, tell them about the mistake, but that doesn't make them a terrible person. Nobody wakes up wanting to do a crappy job, right?
You're absolutely right if you have the choice to really have this one-on-one with someone, but you work with larger organizations too, so you're dealing with a number of different personas even internally. You have your directors, you get your managers, then there are reps, but ultimately again, you as a CRO set the tone, share the vision, and all these practices could be applied. How should we coach our directors so they can coach their managers so those managers can coach the rep? Like,
Coaching the
what's the
coaches.
there you go,
Coaching the
yeah.
coaches. Well, it's in the end, it's kind of the same way. It's just the size of the audience, right? And the bigger thing I think as a CRO is your main job is to establish the cultural aspect and really give the proper vision of what is expected. Sales is one of those very simple careers as far as it's easy to measure whether or not you're being successful or not. The other job as a CRO or as a director, even within that organization, is to understand and analyze what are the extenuating circumstances that maybe contributed to somebody being an underperformer versus just self-limiting behavior, perhaps that
Mhm.
prevented them from being more successful, either because they're just not putting forth the effort. So really, it just comes back down to is if you can establish that the culture and how you coach your coaches, that should pass on to them. And the bigger part is to also analyze their work. How are they at communicating that message? Are they managing or are they leading? There's so many tools available to us nowadays that didn't exist when I started my career. Similar tools to what you've created over time, and that's certainly been an evolution, Michael, as you well know, um,
That's true.
across the board. But it's always to me, I think, come from that place of how better can I understand, how better can I encourage, how better can I help my team, no matter what level they're in. Some
Mhm.
of that's like getting information for managers to make sure that they can do that. So you think about conversation intelligence tools that come into it. What other sales training things that can I bring in that's providing instant feedback or near instant feedback that kind of continues that on a loop? Because again, you should always be coaching, right? You're always practicing, you're always trying to improve, and that should exist within a sales organization as well. And you should make sure that that's communicated and established and understood, that just because you're a veteran, just because you've been doing it 20 plus years, doesn't mean that you shouldn't also practice calls, that you shouldn't also relearn things. One of the things I always think about is, why do companies organize sales kickoffs? Often they're done twice a year, right? There's the beginning of the year one, then there's the middle of the year. It's never at the middle of the year, because you want to make sure people are as close to hitting numbers, as possible. And I think one of the bigger reasons that you do that is to bring people together, to make sure that they understand the common vision, and to remotivate them. Because again, you are constantly failing more than you're succeeding. And, there's always the 80-20 rule, component of that as well, where you got certain top performers that may have made annual quota by the time you get to that mid-year meeting, and others that are way behind. How do you pick up the ones that are way behind and motivate them to come back together? So these get-togethers, in addition to other constant feedback, hopefully get you to that point of success that comes out of it. That's a thing coming back to coaching, is that I don't think that there's anything where anybody can't be good. If you can implement a methodology and a process, you can take the absolute worst salesperson and make them strong enough to succeed, as long as they'll follow the process. That becomes boring. I mean, for a lot of other people, they go, well, I want to bring myself into it. It may just be that other person, they just need a methodology. They need a process that they can follow, and you got to understand that. If I could take the person who's willing to follow a process and do that all the time, that person's probably going to be 10 times more active than your number one seller. And if you could ever make the number one seller you have be as active as your worst seller, then you have a great organization. But again, you can take your worst seller and should be able to coach them into at least performing. You just got to give them the metrics and the analysis of, here's what you're going to have to do to deliver what we need you to do. But in the end, I want to know what you want to do. If you understand that, that gives you the path to coaching, for them as well. If you understand what they want to accomplish, do they want to be a 6-figure salesperson, a 7-figure salesperson? I mean, talk about earnings, right, that they want to get to.
This is really important. And I was having a conversation with a director of sales at 8x8, my good friend Andy Gillis. And yesterday he said something interesting. He said, look, I'm going to give you a real life example. I had this rep for, if I'm not mistaken, for 2 quarters. She really did a horrible job. She couldn't hit the numbers. She was struggling. And then he had a conversation, just a human to human level conversation. Look, what's going on here? Like, I know there's something more than just those tactics or like your accounts and all that. What's going on? So apparently, their father just passed away. And he said, look, my father passed away a couple of months back, and I completely relate to that. Maybe I don't don't feel it the same way you do. Maybe your relationship is different, but you can talk to me if there is a problem. And that person opened up. And I mean, that's just one example. There's so many things are happening, in our lives that might actually affect. But the idea was to see if the willpower is the problem, or they truly have maybe another underlying problem that we don't even know. So as a leader, we can just dig into understand on a one-on-one level, what's going on in their lives, and if they're willing to change and improve. So long story short, they worked with this person for about a couple of months, 2-3 months, and now she's a top performing rep. I wanted to actually go back to something that you said, Brian. You talk about SKOs. So based on my experience, like SKOs could get really fluffy. They either get together, just have fun, or companies try to really push training in a span of 1 week. So you are here for 1 week. Let's get some training and let's go. But you said something interesting. You said, look, this loop of coaching and training and practice, or whatever it might be, it should be continuous. And then SKOs are just good reasons, and better if you have one at the beginning of the year and maybe one before Q4, just to pump people, to inspire people, to get them together so they can hear each other's story, but not necessarily to train them during that 1 week. So I want to hear a little bit more about that. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Coaching and anything else has to happen continuously all year long to stay on top of it. It's one of the bigger mistakes that a lot of companies will make, startup organizations, mostly because they don't have the same resources available to them again, with available tools and technology, today you can at least start to put some components of that together. But a good leader who has a good additional leadership team with them in the sales organization should understand that, right? That it's kind of a constant, thing. It even goes back to, do you learn more from successful sale, or do you learn more from the situations that aren't successful? So again, in that point of the things that you should probably be doing in between the sales kickoffs are deep analysis on problematic accounts that you're dealing with, or more difficult sales, so that you then have a bit of a group think component to it. So if you're split into regional teams or industry verticals, or kind of however you split up territory, in your organization, and if you have a director level or even a VP level in some larger organizations too, that they're having their meetings at least once a month to go over those types of deals. And there should be post-mortem on closed lost. There should be post-mortem on closed won. You're going to learn more from the loss than you are necessarily the one. So it should be a shorter conversation on the ones. But the bigger one is, what are the deals that are stuck? What are the ones that are, or potentially new, or anything else? That's the type of constant feedback that you do throughout the years, so that you can get people together and go, hey, that reminds me of a similar sale that I had, and this is what I did. And that group think starts to come together within the team. The team starts to help feel that their ideas and contributions are validated beyond just them closing deals, right? They get to help their teammates out. They can get the help from their teammates and the rest. And you really do feel like you're more part of the organization. Then when you come together at these sales kickoffs, you can focus it more on recognition far more than coaching and training, because I've never known a product person to release things only at the beginning of the year. I've never known them to only release things throughout. It's kind of a constant iteration, right? When people are coming out with things, or maybe you tie it together with things that you as an organization subscribe to, right? So let's say you haven't had a conversation intelligence tool. Maybe you haven't had a co-pilot or a coaching tool like a Sell Me This Pen prior to a certain point, but you can take that as, okay, we rolled it out, we did it in this kind of small way, but now we want to bring people together and really start to go through it as a group and train on it. There's lots of different reasons to do other things when you come together as a team, but really that's the point of having recognition and helping to motivate that and put together contests and other things of, how do I get people inspired again to go out and succeed. The get-togethers are about the recognition of those efforts and what's going out.
Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, you just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails. These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With Sell Me This Pen AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only: revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with, or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at sellmethispen.ai. What I believe is, like, great organizations, prior to this, you had this sport analogy of baseball, football. Look at all these athletes. Like, you cannot say, hey, only practice right before you get into the field, or just after you're done or you lost a game. Let's just sit down and analyze it, and then maybe you practice a little bit. They constantly practice and rehearsing and getting ready to bring their A game. But I wanted to ask a question, because you mentioned about tools. You said, hey, you have right now call recording tools, we have coaching tools. Typically, we really focus on the end user. Let's coach the reps. Let's make sure that they're adapting to the tool, continuously using it. But when it comes to, again, frontline managers, directors, even VP level, as a CRO, I want some hard truth. Why many companies don't really invest in coaching the coach to build that skill set and the passion for actually coaching, because we cannot hold them accountable. Like reps, to your point, we have call recording, we have tools, whether they're using it or not. How should we even, hold them accountable that they do the best, coaching?
It's a great point, great question, great topic. Me as a CRO, I may try and have those sessions where I pull people out and work on them or say, okay, go read this book. And it's never just go read the book. Let's talk about the book. Let's talk about why I told you to go and do it. And one of the best ones, at least along those lines for me, was one by Peter Drucker, who's kind of the godfather and guru of management. Was called Managing Oneself. So you kind of learn how to manage yourself. It's thin. It's only about this big. It'll take about a day to read it max, or just a couple of hours. But you got to continuously read it because there's a lot of things to pick up, in it. But companies don't have it. They've done away with those programs. Not all companies, but a lot of companies have done away with it. So what do you end up with on the sales organization is usually you take some of your better performing reps and kind of you think of it in terms of career progression. If that person wants to manage people, and I will tell anybody listening to this, management is not all it's cracked up to be. You're far more psychologist and handholder than you even are coach a lot of the time. So you often think of it in terms of career progression, and if that's what a person aspires to down the line, you want to help them get there. But there's not this management path that you could typically put people on that used to exist in companies a long time ago. I think also because so many people now don't work for large organizations, we all want to be entrepreneurs in some way. We kind of strike out and we go and build things, even if we've come from larger companies for it. So you have to kind of put the onus back on the individual or you as a leader to point them in the right direction, do that. But then that's your job as a VP, as a CRO, to work with them. I know my first management roles, I was shitty at them. I was really bad. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to talk to people. More often than not, you take that same person who's been a successful salesperson, and when they go in and start to work with somebody else, they want to, this is the way I do it. Why aren't you doing it the way I do it? Mm-hmm. And you start to put that on them, and it creates tension, and you don't really know what you're doing. And I'll even say this, if anybody that used to report to me watches this, I apologize to you if you worked with me in the late 2000s and early 2010s, on this. Because again, it's part of continually improving, on it. But the bigger part is just that I realized was like, what do I want to hear from somebody? What did I want to hear? How best do I respond, to things, and try and look at it through that lens. So the hard truth piece of it is you're usually pretty bad at it at the beginning. You have to understand that when you promote somebody to that position or when you hire somebody in to the organization, that their first efforts at it are probably not going to be immediately great, but that's then your job to work with them to get them there. And so just like they're evaluating their reps, you're evaluating them and trying to help them, come in. Just like anything else we've been saying, it's establishing the right culture and vision for what you want to do, but holding them accountable, in that way, but understanding that they're never going to be great in the beginning. It's going to take time.
Let me say something again. Hopefully I don't bug my CRO and VP friends on my network, but the way I look at it, there's a big imbalance in the way we are leading our organizations, and I'm telling you what I mean by that. So for reps, this is one of our main value propositions. Hey, leaders, don't let your reps practice on clients to get better. Let them rehearse, let them practice, before they actually get, on the calls. Obviously, you'd never learn better than actually doing it, because a real scenario, when you go inside the ring, you think you're ready, you get punched, right? But when I look at leadership, whether it's a frontline manager or even executive level, yes, of course, we have courses, we have books, we have executive coaching, etc., etc. But typically, it's not continuous. It's just like a one-off thing. You got your course. You are a leader. You're expected to even find your own way and go do your thing, right? Why do we have this imbalance? Why the expectation is that the end user, the seller, needs to practice, needs to get better, and let's give them continuous coaching. Again, hopefully, because so many organizations don't do that even today. But for our leaders, we don't have enough support And even to your point, as a CRO, and it's even tougher, right? I've been in the seat for like 20 years. It's so hard to say I need some help with my
Yeah.
leadership and coaching.
Well, I think that the bigger thing is once you've kind of got that C-level thing, you're far more doing self-evaluation than somebody else doing it for you. That's the responsibility, I guess, that comes with it. So I agree with you on that. But to me, that kind of, at least the way that I've solved it in the past, is that I wanted my evaluations of my performance to come from the people I
Mm-hmm.
managed. What am
Mm-hmm.
I doing wrong? Right?
Mm-hmm.
I want you to have that freedom to speak openly and tell me that, so that the feedback is a constant one-way street, for it. Not everybody's comfortable with that, right? You come from a natural position of authority for it. It's often another thing why, I mentioned the Army and Navy a little bit. So often in the military, and in other organizations, when you get promoted, you can't work with teams you've worked with before, or you can't necessarily become the leader over people who were your colleagues before, because they just may not recognize the authority that comes
Mm-hmm.
with it. Now, in smaller companies, that's never going to be possible. Well, I should say
Yeah.
never, but is likely not to be possible. So you just want to establish a culture that makes them understand, like, you have to evaluate me as much
Mm-hmm.
as I'm evaluating you, if not
Mm-hmm.
more so, because I don't have anybody above me doing that. My best feedback and my best chance to improve is by understanding where they think I'm not, improving. And that's part of the thing that I guess comes with leadership too. Your job as a CRO or CEO or C-level person is not to be the smartest person in the room. You want to hire the smartest people in the room. Your job is simply to make decisions based upon all of the information that they feedback. So you bear that responsibility. Successfully or unsuccessfully, you
Mm-hmm.
want to make your job is to bear the burden of decision making from it. Your job is not necessarily to know the answers. And any leader who comes in feeling like they know the answers, or it kind of becomes this top down edict driven situation, to me isn't going to be successful terribly long. And what I would measure that success is in keeping people around. Okay, making them want to be a part of your organization. If you're fully top down the entire time, they're not going to be there. And that's a much harder thing to continually make quota, continually grow the company, if you're constantly having to train new people and replace the people that are successful and have been doing good work for you. That's the biggest learning that I've come out of it is, you know, I have to have the feedback of my team
I
far
love
more
this so much.
than
Yeah.
anything else, because again, there's just not a real other option.
I think that comes with a lot of maturity and humility to
Oh
be
yeah,
open to feedback, like especially to your point, when you go all the way up the chain of command, if you will, and you are the authority. Like that's the reality. You're gonna make hard decisions. You got the board to answer. You work with CEO, and the fact that you be open to hear, hey, what am I missing? Even like guys, do I give you enough support to be
or what
successful?
are we missing, right? Like,
What are we missing?
what
Even
are we
better,
missing?
yeah.
Making them a part of the whole
Mm-hmm.
thing. Bigger part. So you make a decision. You start to go down that path. The bigger thing, again, checking your ego. To your point, is when you have to course correct, being ready to do so and do so quickly, right? In the sense of, it's often the burden of management's responsibility that it's okay to make a bad hire, right? No one should be
Mm-hmm.
judged on their track record of hiring that they do. And what I mean by that is specifically, like, did this person work out? Did they not work out? Because everybody puts their best foot forward in an interview. Everybody
Of course.
puts their successes and accomplishments on their resume, not the negative things about them. So you go into it with your best effort to believe that they will succeed and can, and then try and implement something where you can coach them to improve. But the bigger piece is, if they're not a good hire, you got to pull that quickly. Usually, the not a good hire thing in my piece is not whether or not they can sell or they are closing deals. It's more the same thing that so many people fall into, myself included, yourself included, where you start to talk about the negatives of the work and you get mired in that thing. It's just like a relationship, right? When you're a bad marriage or a bad relationship where you're arguing all the time, it's hard to get out of that process, right? And kind of where, so that person who kind of comes in and becomes technically a bit cancerous in the organization, where they're seeing all the negative pieces and then they want to go have conversations about that with everybody else, and they start to seek that out, and it becomes far more of their day than it is the things that you need from. That's the person you need to excise from the organization quickly. Again, it's okay to make a bad hire. It's not okay to keep a bad hire. Right.
Makes sense.
And
make absolute sense.
There's like the challenger methodology talks about these types of salespeople that are there. So kind of the elephant hunter, piece of that personality is kind of your lone wolf, right? That's the person who doesn't want to work in the CRM or recap their information, correctly or consistently is probably a better way to say it. But they ultimately perform for you. So you got to be able to, as a leader, look at all of those personality types and manage them and deal with them, encourage them and coach them. Kind of the whole idea around challengers, trying to get them back to some level of consistently as far as how to be the best top performer you can. But you got to manage all of these personality types that come into it.
To your point, you have to deal with multiple different, not only personalities. Right now you see like with the remote work, you have people from different cultures, different age group, different, skill gap. So yeah. It's just part of, what we do. Look, this is my last question, and I want you to be super blunt about this one. All right. Look, everyone gets coached ultimately through CRO, right? You have this ultimate power to bring the coaching culture to your revenue organization. If you could choose only one go-to-market function to help you build this culture more effectively and efficiently, which one would you choose?
Well, the obvious answer to me for that, but again, it probably depends on if your company's big enough to have a setup this way, would be my customer success organization. In that sense, that the way customer success kind of has evolved, is they're the ones taking care of the existing business, the clients that have been there, that the salespeople ultimately sold. Now, again, maybe your company's not large enough. Maybe your salespeople are also serving that function. And if so, then I would probably, stretch it out to probably choose the product organization over the marketing organization, simply because salespeople need something to sell, not just a description of how it's going to sell or understanding what campaigns and branding components, come into that. And usually the marketing organization, or at least it better be significantly smaller than the sales organization, which to me should include a customer success or account management team in addition to your hunters. Because if they believe in the same principles, or if they can agree to constant improvement, over what they're doing, they're also identifying potential upsell opportunities. So again, it depends on the organization and the structure that you have. It may be that customer success team is fully responsible for growth within accounts. And if so, then they're just an extension of your hunter team. And you want them to constantly be open to feedback and improvement and having that type of, cultural component to them to understand that now they're not nearly failing at the same rate, at least not hopefully. If they are, then there's a problem.
Very in trouble.
For sure. But you want that to be permeated throughout that piece of the organization too, because if you're not retaining your business and also growing that existing business consistently enough, then your hunters are only bailing water out of the boat that never has, the hole plugged, for it. So it has to be a part of that organization if I was to choose one. Now, the caveat with that of if it's not an organization that is large enough yet to have a customer success or account management function, then I want the product team to, have that type of culture as well, mostly in the sense that what's the one thing you'll hear from anyone in an organization when product tells me that we're going to launch on November 1st, you add 2 months to that time frame. Well, you could change that through proper coaching, right? Through in an inspirational culture of let's meet these deadlines, that we're going to have. For at least just this is my personal belief, for it. Obviously, there's always certain exceptions that can come up, for it. But I would want that organization to be rowing right along with me,
Brian, you're
under
in
that
trouble.
same situation.
What you said actually is really interesting, and I'm going to use it. Like, if I want to bring my coaching to another org inside my
Yeah.
go-to-market teams, when that be? So let me ask this way again. So if you wanted to partner up with one team to help you bring your coaching, visions and culture, and help your sales team adapt to it, then which team would you choose?
I'd still go back to product at that point. I really would. And that's the yin and yang of every organization. Okay. Product people think or want products to sell themselves. And salespeople know the reality is that never happens. Okay. Or rarely,
Mm-hmm.
happens. The only time I would say a product ever sells itself is a product that's made for product people. So, if you make something easier to publish code,
Mm-hmm.
that's probably going to be something that anybody who publishes code is going to go, I need that. But everything else, really comes down to somebody getting in front of customers and reaching out and evangelizing the message and taking the brunt of the effort to get the message out there and persuade and talk people into parting with their hard-earned money in order to get something. And so I would certainly want my product team understanding that this is ultimately, we're going to take these amazing things that you built and are continuing to create and continuing to improve, but take them to market, in a way. And I want to know every which way that they work. Now, the other part is that there is nothing better than customer feedback to share with them. So it becomes the two-way street of helping them understand what the market reaction is to what we're doing and where they need to improve. And it's often why you have customer advisory boards that exist within companies as well. So to me, that's the one organization that to me is most critical to be in lockstep with my sales organization culturally and goal oriented, in the same way. Bigger part of it is too, right? Right. So like as a CRO, right, when you're planning things out at the beginning of the year and you kind of understand, okay, this is the product roadmap. We know once we get this feature, it's going to allow us to sell the product for 10 times more or 1.5 times more than what we're doing now, or at least give us a small little bump and upsell. You start to plan out, okay, I know that this is going to come in here and I can meet my revenue goals.
You got your product team as your allies.
Well, it has to be. It's not going to be the accounting or finance team.
Certainly not, I guess.
But to me, that's the most, if I got to pick one, that is purely the one that I would choose.
Awesome. Look, Brian, I appreciate you. I really enjoyed this conversation. If someone wants to reach out to you, first and foremost, can they and how?
Yes, they can. You can find me on LinkedIn. The company that I've recently started is called Clozrr, Clozrr. What Clozrr is doing, and I've got other people that are helping is with this as well, is we're creating kind of a full service model of helping companies, really in particular a lot of startup and smaller companies, come in and help grow and manage their sales organizations. So we work with a lot of companies that have been CEO-led sales or CEO-managed sales teams and helping to come in and relieve that person of that burden that they're facing. But we also come in and help to analyze and understand the whole go-to-market function, what's the branding function, and really try and lead people away from being product-led to problem-led. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
which is a big, to me, paradigm shift that you have to think. Yeah, because so often, right, companies come in and they think, here, look at my product. Look at how amazing what I do is.
I don't care.
The clients care about their problems, right? Like, so you need to speak to them in that. So again, that ties back to the marketing, piece with it. So I've got a couple of marketing folks that I work with that all have specific things that they do. So one person's kind of creative visionary, one person's the tactical implement side of it, and the other is the overall, helping to tie it into the organization. My focus is how that factors into sales, and so we can either do one component of that or several components, or the totality, of it, and bringing together the other people involved in the organization. So that's what Clozrr is doing. Biggest piece out of it is, having been an entrepreneur several times, I was looking at it and going, like, this is something that I need. And we're not the only people doing this. But if I had had a resource that could help me in this way, but I'm not having to take on headcount for it, I can look at it as a CapEx expense.
Yep.
But it bridges a gap until I'm, to that point, and hopefully come in and help in a variety of different ways. I know that I have always needed that, and I think even yourself, you'd admit that that's part of the thing. When you're so close to it, an outside
Yep.
viewpoint certainly helps, even if it's for just a short period of time.
All right, guys, founders out there, there you have it. If you want someone experienced who's been and done that, and so just reach out.
Yeah, so you can find me at clozrr.com, CLOZRR.com,
Awesome.
or on my LinkedIn page.
Yes, fantastic. Brian, thank you very much. I appreciate you again taking the time. Guys, I hope you learned something, enjoyed this podcast, and I see you soon. Bye for now.
All right, bye everyone.